4-year-old Archie Harrison stood confidently in front of his kindergarten class, his clear American accent ringing through the Montecito classroom as he described his family's weekend trip to the beach. His teacher smiled encouragingly as he explained how they'd built awesome sandcastles and saw some really cool dolphins, his vocabulary and pronunciation indistinguishable from his California-born classmates. Yet hanging on the classroom wall was a world map where he could point to England and explain that his daddy came from way over there. The complexity of Archie's cultural identity was becoming more apparent as he grew older and more articulate. At home, Harry had begun sharing stories about his British childhood, carefully edited for age appropriateness but rich with details about castles, traditions, and family members who lived across the ocean. Archie listened with fascination, but his questions often reflected his American perspective. Why did you have to wear those fancy clothes, and did you get to go to Disneyland when you were little? Megan watched these exchanges with careful attention, noting how her son processed information about his dual heritage. His British connections remained somewhat abstract to him, like characters in the storybooks they read together. The tangible reality of his daily life was thoroughly American, from the organic fruits he snacked on to the soccer cleats he wore to practice at the local sports club. The family's approach to maintaining British connections had evolved significantly since their arrival in California. Video calls with Harry's relatives became regular but scheduled events rather than spontaneous conversations. Archie's interactions with his British family members were warm but formal, lacking the easy familiarity he shared with his American grandmother and the friends he saw daily. Harry's efforts to share his British heritage with Archie took many forms. Weekend activities sometimes included British films appropriate for children, afternoon tea ceremonies that amused the little boy with their formality, and stories about historical figures and traditions. Yet Archie's responses to these cultural exposures often highlighted the differences between his American upbringing and his father's British background. The linguistic implications of Archie's American accent extended beyond pronunciation to include cultural references and ways of thinking. When he talked about fall instead of autumn or asked for chips when he meant crisps, Harry realized how thoroughly American his son's worldview had become. These weren't just vocabulary differences, they represented fundamentally different ways of categorizing and understanding experience. School interactions provided daily reinforcement of Archie's American identity. His classmates came from diverse backgrounds, but they shared common reference points from American popular culture, geography, and social traditions. When children discussed their weekend activities or family traditions, Archie's contributions reflected his California lifestyle rather than any awareness of British alternatives. The family's social calendar had settled into patterns that reflected their American community integration. Birthday parties followed American formats with games and activities that were foreign to Harry's childhood experience. Holiday celebrations emphasized American traditions, though Meghan and Harry sometimes incorporated British elements as educational opportunities rather than lived traditions. Harry's relationship with his son's accent had evolved from initial surprise to acceptance and, eventually, to appreciation. He recognized that Archie's confident, direct communication style reflected positive aspects of American culture that he valued: individual expression, optimism, and the belief that anyone could achieve their goals through effort and determination. The practical advantages of Archie's American accent became apparent in various social situations. He could interact naturally with service providers, participate confidently in community events, and navigate American institutions without the cultural translation that his father sometimes required. His speech patterns opened doors and created connections that might have been more difficult if he had maintained a British accent. Meghan's extended family provided Archie with deep roots in American culture that balanced his more distant British connections. Regular visits from cousins, participation in American family traditions, and exposure to American perspectives on everything from politics to entertainment gave him a comprehensive understanding of American social norms. The family's involvement in American charitable causes exposed Archie to distinctly American approaches to social responsibility. Unlike the duty-based service model that characterized British royal charitable work, American philanthropy emphasized personal choice, innovation, and direct impact. Archie absorbed these values through family conversations and activities. Educational choices reflected the family's commitment to giving Archie advantages that American culture could provide. His school emphasized creativity, critical thinking, and individual development in ways that differed significantly from traditional British educational approaches. His teachers encouraged the kind of questioning and self-expression that his American accent naturally supported. The entertainment industry connections that came with life in Southern California exposed Archie to behind-the-scenes aspects of American popular culture. Family friends included writers, directors, and producers whose children became his playmates and whose perspectives on creativity and achievement became part of his environmental education. Harry's professional activities in America required him to adapt his communication style for American audiences, but he maintained his British accent as part of his personal brand. This created an interesting dynamic in the household where father and son spoke with distinctly different accents while sharing many other characteristics and interests. The family's travel within the United States provided Archie with a broad understanding of American regional diversity. Trips to different states exposed him to various American accents and cultural variations while reinforcing his overall American identity. His ability to communicate naturally in any American context became a source of family pride. Archie's American accent also influenced how others perceived and interacted with him. Unlike his father, who was often immediately identified as British and sometimes treated as a curiosity or celebrity, Archie could move through American society without attracting special attention based on his speech patterns. The seasonal rhythms of California life continued to shape Archie's cultural references and vocabulary. His understanding of weather patterns, outdoor activities, and natural phenomena reflected his West Coast upbringing rather than the maritime climate and cultural traditions that had shaped his father's childhood. Technology played a significant role in Archie's cultural development, with American apps, games, and online content reinforcing his linguistic patterns and cultural references. Unlike previous generations, his media consumption was thoroughly integrated with his daily American experience rather than providing windows into other cultural perspectives. The family's approach to discipline and behavior management reflected American parenting philosophies that emphasized communication, choice, and natural consequences. These interactions further reinforced Archie's American communication patterns and cultural expectations about how children and adults should relate to each other. Harry's memories of his own childhood sometimes created poignant moments of comparison with Archie's American upbringing. The freedom and informality that characterized his son's daily life contrasted sharply with the structured, protocol-driven environment that had shaped his own early years. Meghan's professional background in American entertainment continued to influence family culture through her network of friends and colleagues. Archie grew up around conversations about American creative projects, business opportunities, and cultural trends that were becoming natural parts of his worldview. The family's financial independence allowed them to create a lifestyle that combined the best aspects of American opportunity with carefully chosen elements of British tradition. This selective approach to cultural inheritance gave Archie exposure to his heritage without requiring him to live within its constraints. Religious and spiritual practices in the household reflected American approaches to personal faith that emphasized individual choice and diverse influences rather than traditional institutional obligations. This flexibility allowed Archie to develop his own relationship with spirituality within an American cultural framework. The development of Archie's American accent represented more than linguistic adaptation, it symbolized the family's successful transformation from British royal obligations to American entrepreneurial opportunities. His speech patterns reflected the confidence and optimism that had drawn his parents to build their new life in California. Friends and observers often noted how naturally Archie moved between conversations about his British heritage and his American daily life. His accent remained consistently American, but his ability to discuss both cultures with age-appropriate sophistication suggested a developing skill at cultural navigation that would serve him well throughout his life. The long-term implications of Archie's American linguistic development continued to evolve as he grew older and more aware of his unique family background. His parents worked to help him understand that his accent was just one aspect of his complex identity, which included both American opportunities and British heritage. Community involvement provided Archie with deep connections to American civic life that complemented his family's more formal charitable activities. Participation in local events, school fundraisers, and neighborhood gatherings gave him first-hand experience with American democratic values and community organization. The family's documentation of Archie's development included careful attention to his language acquisition and cultural adaptation. Home videos captured his increasingly confident American speech patterns alongside his growing understanding of his family's unique circumstances and opportunities. As Archie approached school age, his American accent and cultural fluency positioned him for educational and social opportunities that his parents hoped would provide foundation for whatever future he might choose. His linguistic development represented successful adaptation to their new environment while maintaining connection to the heritage that would always be part of his identity. The evolution of Archie's speech patterns from his earliest sounds to his confident American accent reflected the broader transformation of his entire family's life circumstances. His voice carried the promise of opportunities that California could provide while honoring the courage his parents had shown in choosing to build a different kind of life for their children. The California sunshine streamed through the large windows of the Montecito mansion as 2-year-old Archie Harrison chased butterflies in the expansive backyard. His delighted squeals carried a distinctly American intonation that made his mother smile with recognition and his father pause with a mixture of pride and melancholy. The little boy's speech was developing rapidly, and each new word he learned reflected the environment that now shaped his daily life. Megan knelt beside her son as he examined a colorful flower bed, listening carefully to his excited chatter about bugs and flowers and pretty colors. His pronunciation carried the soft, rounded vowels of Southern California, a stark contrast to the crisp consonants and precise diction that characterized his father's speech. The difference wasn't lost on either parent, though they processed its significance very differently. Harry found himself unconsciously adjusting his own speech when talking to Archie, though not necessarily toward an American accent. Instead, he often adopted the warm, accessible tone he remembered his mother using when she spoke to children. Diana had possessed a gift for making young people feel heard and valued, and Harry hoped to channel that same quality in his relationship with his son. The family's daily routine centered around activities that encouraged Archie's natural curiosity and verbal development. Breakfast conversations took place at a sunny kitchen table where the little boy practiced naming his food, asking for more bananas or declaring that his eggs were yummy. His vocabulary expanded daily, incorporating words from his American environment that his British relatives might not immediately recognize. Playdates with neighboring children provided Archie with regular exposure to peer group speech patterns. The other toddlers in their exclusive Montecito community came from diverse backgrounds, but they all shared the relaxed, confident communication style that characterized Southern California childhood. Archie absorbed these speech patterns effortlessly, his young brain wiring itself to match the sounds he heard most frequently. Megan's mother played an increasingly important role in Archie's language development. Doria Ragland brought her own speaking style to their daily interactions, one that reflected her Los Angeles upbringing and her background in social work. Her speech was warm, encouraging, and peppered with expressions that Archie began to incorporate into his own communication attempts. The influence of American television and children's programming also shaped Archie's developing accent. Unlike British children's shows, which maintained formal speech patterns even in entertainment contexts, American programs featured characters who spoke with the relaxed, conversational tone that was becoming natural to the young boy. Harry sometimes caught himself feeling nostalgic when he heard Archie's increasingly American pronunciation. The child's speech reminded him daily of the geographical and cultural distance they had traveled from his own childhood. Yet he also recognized that his son's accent represented freedom from the rigid expectations that had constrained his own early years. The family's social circle in California included many entertainment industry professionals, philanthropists, and entrepreneurs who spoke with the confident, optimistic tone that characterized American achievement culture. Archie was exposed to conversations about possibility and innovation that were framed very differently than the duty-focused discussions that dominated British royal circles. Swimming lessons at their private pool provided another venue for language development. The instructor, an energetic young woman from San Diego, used encouraging phrases and positive reinforcement techniques that reflected American approaches to child development. Archie learned to associate water activities with praise delivered in distinctly American speech patterns. Visits to local farmers markets and community events exposed Archie to the diverse linguistic landscape of Southern California. He heard Spanish spoken by vendors, listened to conversations among families from various cultural backgrounds, and absorbed the multicultural environment that shaped his understanding of how people communicate. The absence of British royal protocol in their daily lives allowed for more spontaneous, expressive communication. Archie was encouraged to share his thoughts and feelings without the formal constraints that might have shaped his speech development in a traditional royal environment. This freedom manifested in his growing confidence with verbal expression. Harry's friends from his British military background occasionally visited California, providing Archie with exposure to different speech patterns. However, these visits were relatively infrequent compared to the daily immersion in American English that shaped the majority of his linguistic development. Meghan's approach to motherhood emphasized emotional intelligence and open communication, values that were reflected in how she spoke to and with Archie. Her background in American education and entertainment influenced her parenting style, encouraging the kind of expressive, confident communication that was becoming natural to their son. The family's interactions with service providers, from gardeners to housekeepers to security personnel, exposed Archie to working-class American speech patterns as well as the more polished tones of their affluent social circle. This diversity gave him a broader understanding of how language functioned in different social contexts. Bedtime stories took on special significance in the household. While Harry sometimes read from British children's classics, Meghan often chose American authors whose work reflected the cultural values and speech patterns she wanted to share with her son. The contrast between these literary traditions influenced Archie's developing sense of language rhythm and vocabulary. Trips to local libraries and bookstores provided additional exposure to American cultural norms around children's development. Storytime sessions conducted by enthusiastic librarians reinforced the American approach to early childhood education, which emphasized participation, creativity, and self-expression. The family's cooking activities became opportunities for language learning as well. Archie learned American terms for foods and cooking processes, developing a culinary vocabulary that reflected his California upbringing. His requests for cookies rather than biscuits and candy instead of sweets marked clear linguistic territory. Harry's adaptation to American speech patterns happened more gradually and consciously than his son's natural acquisition. He found himself using different vocabulary and intonation when speaking to American friends and colleagues, though he maintained his British accent in most circumstances. The family's involvement with American charitable organizations exposed Archie to the language of social activism and community engagement as it was practiced in the United States. These interactions emphasized personal empowerment and individual responsibility in ways that differed from British approaches to social service. Archie's developing personality began to reflect the confidence and directness that American parents often encouraged in their children. His questions became more direct, his expressions more animated, and his overall communication style more assertive than might have been typical for a British child of his background. The seasonal rhythms of California life provided a different framework for language development than Archie would have experienced in Britain. Beach vocabulary, hiking terminology, and outdoor activity descriptions became natural parts of his growing word collection, reflecting a lifestyle that emphasized physical activity and outdoor exploration. Harry's relationship with his son's accent evolution required ongoing emotional adjustment. While he celebrated Archie's confidence and happiness, he sometimes felt a pang of loss when he realized how different his child's speech was becoming from his own childhood patterns. The family's private celebrations of American holidays introduced Archie to cultural traditions and associated vocabulary that were foreign to his father's experience. 4th of July barbecues, Thanksgiving preparations, and Halloween activities all contributed to his growing identification with American culture. Meghan's former colleagues from the entertainment industry brought their own communication styles to family gatherings. These interactions exposed Archie to the performance-oriented, expressive speech patterns that characterized many aspects of American professional culture. The contrast between Archie's developing American accent and his father's maintained British pronunciation became a source of gentle family humor. Harry would sometimes tease Meghan about their son's increasingly Californian vocabulary, while she pointed out how quickly children adapt to their immediate environment. Local preschool environments, when Archie began attending, reinforced American educational approaches that emphasized creativity, individual expression, and collaborative learning. The teaching methods and classroom interactions differed significantly from traditional British educational models, further shaping his communication development. The family's weekend activities often centered around American recreational traditions that provided new contexts for language learning. Baseball games, theme park visits, and beach outings all contributed vocabulary and cultural references that were becoming natural parts of Archie's worldview. Harry's efforts to maintain some connection to British culture in their household included occasional video calls with family members and friends in England. However, these interactions represented a small fraction of Archie's total linguistic exposure compared to his daily immersion in American speech patterns. The medical and healthcare interactions that all families navigate provided another venue for American linguistic influence. Pediatrician visits, dental checkups, and other routine appointments exposed Archie to American medical terminology and communication styles that differed from British healthcare traditions. Meghan's pride in her son's confident, American-accented speech was evident in how she shared his achievements with friends and family. She saw his linguistic development as evidence of successful adaptation to their new life and as preparation for opportunities that American culture might provide. The family's exploration of California's natural wonders provided rich opportunities for descriptive language development. Visits to national parks, beaches, and mountain areas introduced vocabulary related to American geography and outdoor recreation that was becoming part of Archie's natural expression. Harry's gradual acceptance of his son's American accent reflected his broader adaptation to their new life circumstances. He began to see Archie's speech patterns as a sign of successful integration rather than as a loss of British heritage, though the adjustment required ongoing emotional work. The soft morning light filtered through the elegant windows of Frogmore Cottage as 5-month-old Archie Harrison Mountbatten Windsor gurgled happily in his mother's arms. Meghan Markle, now the Duchess of Sussex, gazed down at her son with a mixture of wonder and concern. The baby's bright eyes seemed to take in everything around him, from the perfectly manicured gardens visible through the glass to the formal portraits of his royal relatives adorning the walls. Prince Harry stood nearby, adjusting his tie before another official engagement. The weight of royal duty pressed heavily on his shoulders, heavier now that he had a family to consider. Every public appearance, every carefully scripted statement, every moment lived under the microscope of British media scrutiny felt more suffocating than before. He watched his wife holding their son and saw the strain in her posture, the way she seemed to shrink whenever photographers appeared in the distance. The couple had tried to make their life work within the confines of royal protocol. They had followed the rules, attended the ceremonies, smiled for the cameras, and performed their duties with dedication. But, beneath the surface, tensions simmered like water approaching a boil. The British tabloids had been relentless in their coverage of Meghan, dissecting every outfit choice, every public statement, every interaction with other members of the royal family. Archie remained blissfully unaware of the controversy surrounding his parents. At his age, the world consisted of warm milk, soft blankets, and the sound of his mother's voice reading to him from colorful picture books. Sometimes she read in English, sometimes in the American accent that felt more natural to her when she was relaxed and unguarded. The baby responded to both with equal enthusiasm, his tiny hands reaching for the pages as if trying to grasp the words themselves. The decision to step back from royal duties didn't happen overnight. It emerged through countless private conversations between Harry and Meghan, whispered discussions that took place after Archie had fallen asleep and the staff had retired for the evening. They talked about their son's future, about the kind of childhood they wanted him to have, about whether the goldfish bowl of royal life was truly the best environment for a growing child. Harry remembered his own childhood, the way every scraped knee became front-page news, how every teenage mistake was magnified and analyzed by journalists and royal commentators. He recalled the devastating impact of his mother's death, not just the personal loss but the way it played out in public, with strangers around the world feeling entitled to comment on his grief. The thought of Archie experiencing that same level of scrutiny made his stomach clench with protective anxiety. Meghan brought her own perspective to these discussions. She had lived in the public eye as an actress, but that felt manageable compared to the intensity of royal attention. In Hollywood, she could control her narrative to some extent, could choose which events to attend and which interviews to give. As a member of the royal family, every aspect of her life became public property, subject to interpretation and judgment by people who had never met her. The breaking point came gradually, through a series of small incidents that accumulated like pebbles in a shoe. There was the constant speculation about family relationships, the way her every gesture was analyzed for signs of discord. There were the rules about what she could and couldn't say, the careful choreography required for every public appearance. Most painful of all, there was the realization that these constraints would shape Archie's entire life if they remained. One evening in late 2019, as winter settled over Windsor, Harry and Meghan sat in their living room after putting Archie to bed. The house felt simultaneously too large and too small, grand enough to accommodate their royal status but confining in ways that had nothing to do with physical space. They talked about alternatives, about places where they might build a different kind of life for their family. Meghan's connection to America remained strong. Her mother, Doria Ragland, lived in Los Angeles, and Meghan missed the easy relationship she had always shared with her. In California, she could imagine Archie growing up with a sense of normalcy that seemed impossible in Britain. He could attend regular schools, make friends without security protocols, and develop his own identity separate from royal expectations. The logistics of such a move seemed overwhelming at first. There were security considerations, financial implications, and the complex matter of maintaining some connection to the royal family while establishing independence. But, as they discussed the possibilities, the idea began to feel less like a fantasy and more like a practical solution to their growing concerns. Harry's relationship with his family had always been complicated, shaped by loss and duty in equal measure. He loved his grandmother, the Queen, and respected the institution she represented. But he also recognized that his own happiness and that of his wife and son had to take priority. The decision to step back felt simultaneously like a betrayal and an act of self-preservation. The announcement, when it came, sent shockwaves through the British establishment and media. The carefully worded statement spoke of their desire to become financially independent while continuing to support the Queen. Behind the diplomatic language lay months of careful planning and difficult conversations with palace officials who struggled to understand how two people could walk away from positions that millions would envy. Archie, now crawling and beginning to babble his first words, remained oblivious to the drama surrounding his family's decision. He responded to the increased attention from his parents during this transitional period, sensing their stress without understanding its source. His first attempts at speech came during this tumultuous time, simple sounds that both parents celebrated with disproportionate joy, grateful for moments of pure happiness amid the chaos of restructuring their lives. The process of leaving royal life proved more complicated than anyone had anticipated. There were negotiations about titles, about security arrangements, about the level of contact the family would maintain with other royals. Every detail required careful consideration, not just for its immediate impact but for how it might affect Archie's future relationship with his British heritage. As preparations for their departure from Britain intensified, Harry and Meghan found themselves documenting everything about Archie's early months. They took countless photographs of him in the gardens of Frogmore Cottage, recorded videos of his first attempts at crawling, and kept detailed notes about his development. These memories felt precious partly because they represented the last chapter of his life as a British royal baby. The couple spent long hours discussing how to explain their decision to Archie when he was old enough to understand. They wanted him to know that their choice came from love, not rejection of his heritage. They hoped he would understand that by leaving Britain, they were trying to give him options that might not have existed within the traditional royal framework. Friends and family members reacted to the news with a mixture of support and concern. Some understood the pressures the couple faced and admired their courage in prioritizing their family's well-being. Others worried about the precedent their departure might set and the impact it could have on the monarchy's stability. Meghan's American friends and family generally supported the decision, many having watched with concern as she struggled to adapt to British royal life. They looked forward to having her closer, to being able to offer support during the challenging transition ahead. For them, the move represented a return to normalcy rather than a dramatic departure from tradition. The British public's reaction proved more divided. Some sympathized with the couple's desire for privacy and understood their concerns about media intrusion. Others felt disappointed or even betrayed by their decision to step back from duties they had embraced so publicly just a few years earlier. The debate played out in newspapers, on social media, and in countless conversations across the country. As their departure date approached, Harry and Meghan found themselves treasuring quiet moments with Archie more intensely than ever before. They knew that once they left Britain, their son's life would change in ways they could anticipate and others they couldn't predict. The move to America would give him opportunities they valued, but it would also separate him from extended family and from a cultural heritage that had shaped generations of his relatives. The final weeks in Britain passed in a blur of packing, planning, and farewell visits. Harry spent time with his grandmother and other family members, trying to maintain relationships that the physical distance would inevitably strain. These conversations were often emotional, filled with expressions of love alongside concerns about the future. Archie's routine continued largely unchanged during these preparations. He still napped at regular intervals, still delighted in peekaboo games with his parents, still reached for colorful toys with the determined focus that characterized his personality even at such a young age. His parents tried to shield him from the stress of preparation, maintaining the calm, nurturing environment they wanted to characterize his childhood. The journey across the Atlantic marked the beginning of a new chapter for the entire family. As their plane lifted off from British soil, Harry and Meghan felt a mixture of sadness and anticipation. They were leaving behind everything familiar in pursuit of something they couldn't yet fully envision but desperately hoped would prove worthwhile. Archie slept through most of the flight, cradled in his mother's arms as they crossed an ocean that would now separate him from half of his heritage. When he woke, the world outside the airplane windows had changed completely, though he was too young to understand the significance of that transformation. The decision to settle in California reflected both practical considerations and emotional ones. The climate would be healthier for year-round outdoor activities. The entertainment industry connections would provide professional opportunities for Meghan and, potentially for Harry as well. Most importantly, the distance from British media would give them space to develop their own approach to public life. Their first months in America were spent in a borrowed house, a temporary arrangement that gave them time to figure out their next steps. During this period, Archie began to develop more distinct personality traits. He showed a preference for being outdoors, seemed to enjoy the sound of birds singing, and demonstrated an early interest in music that pleased both parents. The house came with a garden that felt more relaxed than the formal grounds of Frogmore Cottage. Here, Archie could crawl freely on grass that didn't need to be perfect, could explore without worrying about disturbing carefully maintained flower beds. His parents watched him discover lizards sunning themselves on rocks, heard him laugh at the sight of hummingbirds hovering near bright flowers. Meghan's mother became a more regular presence in their lives once they settled in California. Doria's relationship with her grandson flourished during this period, and her influence on his development became more pronounced. She brought a different energy to their household, one that was warmer and less formal than what Archie had experienced in his early months. The contrast between their new life and their former royal existence became apparent in countless small ways. Grocery shopping was no longer a carefully orchestrated security operation. Visits to the beach didn't require advanced planning and media coordination. Archie could experience normal childhood activities without the constant awareness of being observed and documented. As Archie's first birthday approached, his parents reflected on the dramatic changes their family had experienced in just 12 months. The baby who had been born into one of the world's most traditional institutions was now being raised in one of America's most progressive states. The shift represented everything they had hoped to achieve through their difficult decision to leave royal life behind.